The train whistle shrieked through the crisp Montana air as Zara Novak clutched her worn leather satchel tighter to her chest, her knuckles whitening under the strain. At 22, she was traveling alone for the first time, leaving behind the familiar confines of Boston's polished society for the unknown frontier of Silverwater Creek, a town that existed only as a small dot on the map she'd studied obsessively during her journey west. It was 1878, and the West still represented both opportunity and danger in equal measure. As the train slowed with a rhythmic screech of metal on metal, Zara's stomach knotted with a familiar anxiety. The letter from her Uncle Gilbert, her only living relative, had arrived 3 months ago, offering her a position as the town's new schoolteacher. With her parents' recent passing and mounting debts, threatening to consume what little inheritance remained, she had no choice but to accept. The station was little more than a wooden platform with a small building bearing the town's name in faded paint. Zara descended carefully from the train, her modest navy traveling dress collecting dust the moment her polished boots touched the platform. "Miss Novak?" A round-faced woman with kind eyes approached. "I'm Mrs. Winters, wife of the general store owner. Your uncle asked me to collect you. He's been called away to a neighboring farm, some trouble with a birth." Zara nodded, recalling that her uncle was the only doctor for miles. "Thank you for meeting me. It's very kind." "Not at all, dear. The whole town's been talking about Gilbert's niece coming to teach our children." Mrs. Winters gestured toward a wagon. "Let's get you settled." The ride to her uncle's home at the edge of town revealed Silverwater Creek to be larger than Zara had imagined, though still modest by Eastern standards. A main street lined with businesses, a mercantile, saloon, bank, small hotel, and various other establishments formed the heart of the town. Homes and small farms dotted the surrounding landscape, with mountains rising majestically in the distance. Her uncle's house, a 2-story structure with a welcoming porch and separate medical office attached to one side, stood on a gentle rise overlooking a creek that gave the town its name. Inside, the home was comfortable but simple, warmed by well-worn furniture and bookshelves overflowing with medical texts and novels alike. "Your room is upstairs, first door on the right," Mrs. Winters explained. "Gilbert had it prepared special. The school term starts in a week, giving you time to settle in. There's to be a welcome gathering at the town hall tomorrow evening, nothing fancy, just a way for folks to meet their new teacher." After Mrs. Winters departed, Zara explored her new home. The room prepared for her was bright with afternoon sunlight streaming through lace curtains, illuminating a bed with a handmade quilt, a small writing desk, and a bookshelf already containing teaching materials. Opening her window, she breathed in the scent of pine and distant wildflowers, so different from Boston's coal smoke and sea air. The vast openness both terrified and exhilarated her. Here, perhaps, she could reinvent herself, shed the shy, stammering girl she'd been in Boston's drawing rooms where suitors quickly lost interest in her reticent manner. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of hoofbeats. Looking down, she spotted a rider approaching on a magnificent chestnut stallion. The man dismounted with fluid grace that spoke of a lifetime in the saddle. He was tall, with broad shoulders accentuated by a simple work shirt, worn denim pants, and a dust-covered Stetson that shadowed his features. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, removing his hat in one smooth motion. Even from a distance, his piercing blue eyes caught the sunlight, and Zara found herself stepping back from the window, her heart inexplicably racing. Her uncle arrived home as dusk fell, bringing with him the scent of antiseptic and the outdoors. Gilbert Novak was tall like his late brother, Zara's father, but weather-beaten from years on the frontier. His smile was warm as he embraced his niece. "You look just like your mother," he said, stepping back to examine her. "How was your journey?" Over a simple dinner of stew and fresh bread, Zara shared stories of her travels, while Gilbert filled her in on Silverwater Creek's inhabitants and the challenges of being the town's only doctor. The school's been without a proper teacher for almost a year, he explained. Most of the children have been getting by with lessons from their parents or Mrs. Jenkins, the minister's wife, who does her best but has no formal training. How many students will I have? Zara asked, already calculating supplies and lessons. About 25, ranging from 6 to 16. Some of the older boys only come when farm work permits, especially during planting and harvest. I'll do my best with them, Zara promised, though the prospect of commanding respect from teenage boys nearly her own age intimidated her. I know you will. Your father always said you had a sharp mind. Gilbert's expression softened. I'm sorry about your parents, Zara. The influenza took many good people last winter. Zara nodded, grateful when Gilbert changed the subject to introduce her to the town's notable characters, including Mayor Thompson, Sheriff Kane, and various merchants and families whose children would be in her classroom. And then there's Isaac Merritt, Gilbert added. Owns the largest cattle operation in the territory. He's a good man, fair with his workers, though he keeps to himself mostly. Lost his wife in childbirth about 5 years back. Their daughter, Emma, will be in your class, bright girl, though a bit wild from running with the ranch hands. Zara's mind flashed to the man she'd seen earlier. Does Mr. Merritt have blue eyes? Ride a chestnut stallion? Gilbert raised an eyebrow. That's him. Probably coming to town for supplies. Did you meet him already? No, I just saw someone riding toward town this afternoon. The next evening, Zara stood before the small mirror in her room, smoothing the fabric of her best dress, a deep burgundy wool with modest lace trim at the collar and cuffs. It wasn't the height of fashion, but it was dignified enough for a school teacher making her first impression. Her stomach churned with anxiety. Large gatherings had always been difficult for her, and being the center of attention was her worst nightmare. In Boston, her parents had constantly pushed her into society, hoping she would overcome her shyness and find a suitable match. Instead, each ball and dinner party had left her retreating further into herself. Ready? Gilbert called from downstairs. With a deep breath, Zara descended to meet him, forcing a smile. As ready as I'll ever be. The town hall was a large, open space normally used for community meetings and occasional dances. Tonight, tables lined the walls with food brought by nearly every family in town, and lanterns cast a warm glow over the gathered crowd. Conversation hummed pleasantly, punctuated by occasional laughter. As Zara entered with her uncle, the room gradually quieted, all eyes turning toward her. Mayor Thompson, a portly man with an impressive mustache, approached with outstretched hands. Miss Novak, welcome to Silverwater Creek. We're delighted to have a properly educated young lady taking charge of our school. What followed was a blur of introductions as it seemed every resident wanted to meet the new teacher. Zara smiled and nodded, her voice growing softer with each interaction as her natural reserve reasserted itself. She desperately wished to find a quiet corner, but knew she couldn't disappoint her uncle or these people who had welcomed her so warmly. Mothers proudly introduced children who would be her students. Farmers discussed the importance of reading and arithmetic, and several unmarried men lingered longer than necessary, clearly assessing her potential as more than just their children's teacher. Just as she was beginning to feel overwhelmed, a familiar figure entered the hall. Isaac Merritt was even more imposing up close. He stood at least 6 feet tall, with shoulders broadened by years of physical labor. His dark hair was neatly trimmed, though longer than Eastern fashion dictated, and those striking blue eyes surveyed the room with quiet intensity before landing on her. Beside him stood a small girl with the same eyes, her dark hair braided neatly though wisps escaped to frame her face. She clutched her father's hand tightly, looking as uncomfortable as Zara felt. Gilbert waved them over. Isaac, Emma, come meet my niece. As they approached, Zara noticed that despite his rugged appearance, Isaac moved with an unexpected grace. His expression was serious but not unkind as Gilbert made introductions. Miss Novak, Isaac said, his voice deep and measured as he tipped his hat. Welcome to our town. This is my daughter Emma. The little girl, who appeared to be about 9, offered a small curtsy that seemed at odds with her otherwise tomboyish appearance. Hello, Miss Novak. Hello, Emma, Zara replied, immediately warming to the child. I'm looking forward to having you in my class. Pa says you're from Boston, Emma said. Is it true they have buildings taller than 3 stories? Zara smiled, her tension easing slightly. Yes, some are 5 or 6 stories tall. Emma's quite curious about the world beyond Silverwater, Isaac explained, his hand resting protectively on his daughter's shoulder. Curiosity is essential for learning, Zara replied, finding it easier to speak when discussing education. I brought several books about different cities and countries for the schoolroom. Emma's eyes lit up, and even Isaac's stoic expression softened slightly. The conversation might have continued, but Mayor Thompson interrupted by calling for everyone's attention. Friends and neighbors, let's officially welcome Miss Novak with a proper Silverwater celebration. Hobson, strike up the fiddle. To Zara's horror, chairs were pushed aside to create a dance floor as Mr. Hobson and 2 other men produced instruments. The mayor's wife was already clapping in rhythm as couples began to form. The first dance for our guest of honor, the mayor announced, looking expectantly at Zara. Her throat tightened, palms immediately dampening with sweat. Dancing had been her greatest social failure in Boston, her anxiety causing her to stumble over steps she knew perfectly well in private practice. I don't, she began, but couldn't finish, her voice failing her. Gilbert, recognizing her distress, began to step forward, but Isaac moved first. If Miss Novak would do me the honor, he said, extending a hand toward her. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. Isaac Merritt rarely participated in town social events and never danced, not since his wife's passing. Yet here he was, offering his hand to the newcomer. Zara stared at his outstretched hand, panic freezing her in place. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear into the floorboards, anything but subject herself to the humiliation that would surely follow. Isaac seemed to sense her terror. Instead of pressing, he simply took 1 step toward her and stopped, his hand still extended but his expression revealing no impatience. He was giving her time, allowing her the choice, waiting until she felt ready. In his eyes, Zara saw something unexpected understanding. Not pity or judgment, but a recognition of her struggle that suggested he knew something of such battles himself. The music had started, a gentle melody that matched the tempo of her racing heart. Around them, other couples had begun to dance, diverting some attention away from them. Drawing a shaky breath, Zara placed her trembling hand in Isaac's calloused palm. His fingers closed gently around hers as he led her to the edge of the dance floor, away from the center of attention. We can just sway, he said quietly, for her ears alone. Nothing fancy. His hand was warm at her waist, steady and respectful. Zara focused on the solid presence of him, using it to anchor herself against the tide of anxiety. 1 step at a time, Isaac murmured, guiding her in a simple pattern. Gradually, Zara's breathing steadied. She was dancing awkwardly, perhaps, but dancing nonetheless with the most intimidating man in the room, and somehow it felt safer than she could have imagined. Thank you, she whispered. Isaac's expression remained serious, but his eyes softened. Emma gets frightened in crowds too. Sometimes we just need someone to wait with us until we're ready. When the music ended, Isaac released her with a formal nod. You'll do fine here, Miss Novak, he said, then returned to his daughter, who was watching with wide, curious eyes. The evening continued more comfortably after that first dance. Zara found herself drawn into conversations with the mothers of her future students, discussing everything from reading materials to the harsh winters. She avoided further dancing but felt less panicked about her presence at the gathering. Isaac and Emma departed early, but not before the girl extracted a promise from Zara to show her the books about distant places on the first day of school. As they left, Isaac caught Zara's eye across the room and gave her a slight nod that felt oddly like approval. Later, walking home under a canopy of stars brighter than any she'd seen in Boston, Zara reflected on her unexpected introduction to Silverwater Creek. Particularly, she thought of the moment when Isaac Merritt had simply taken one step and waited, not pushing, not demanding, just offering his presence until she found her courage. "Isaac doesn't usually take to strangers," Gilbert commented as they reached the house. "He's been something of a recluse since Elizabeth died." "His daughter is delightful," Zara replied, sidestepping the observation. Gilbert chuckled. "Emma's a handful, but she's got her father's intelligence and her mother's spirit. Elizabeth was a force of nature, came west as a journalist, if you can believe it. Met Isaac when her stagecoach was attacked. He rescued the passengers and escorted them to safety. She wrote about him in her article, called him the embodiment of frontier nobility." "How romantic," Zara murmured, trying to reconcile the solemn man she'd met with such a dramatic story. They were inseparable from the moment they met. Her death nearly destroyed him. Gilbert's voice lowered. "He didn't speak for months afterward, just worked himself to exhaustion on that ranch and cared for Emma. The only reason he comes to town at all is for his daughter's sake." Zara's heart ached at the thought of such profound loss. Perhaps that explained the understanding she'd glimpsed in Isaac's eyes. He too knew what it was to feel isolated, even in a crowded room. The following days passed in a flurry of preparation as Zara readied the schoolhouse and organized her teaching materials. The one-room school was simple but sound, with rows of desks facing a larger desk and blackboard. Shelves lined the walls, mostly empty until Zara began filling them with books she'd brought from Boston and supplies purchased from Mr. Winters's general store. On Saturday, as she was arranging the desks, the schoolhouse door opened to reveal Emma Merritt, followed by her father. "Miss Novak," Emma called, her earlier shyness apparently forgotten. "Pa said I could help you get ready for school." Isaac remained in the doorway, hat in hand. "If that's agreeable to you, Miss Novak. Emma's been counting the days." "I'd welcome the help," Zara replied, genuinely pleased. "I could use someone to test my new globe and show me where all the local landmarks should go on our map." Emma needed no further invitation, darting inside to examine the partially unpacked crate of supplies. Isaac lingered uncertainly until Zara gestured to a chair. "You're welcome to stay, Mr. Merritt. I've just made tea." "I should get back to the ranch," he began, but Emma interrupted. "Please stay, Pa. I want to show you the books Miss Novak brought." Something in his daughter's eagerness softened his resolve. "Just for a little while, then." What began as a brief visit extended into the afternoon as Emma enthusiastically helped arrange books and supplies. Isaac initially sat quietly, but eventually began assisting with the heavier tasks, mounting shelves, adjusting the stubborn windows, and repairing a wobbly desk. Watching him work, Zara was struck by his methodical efficiency. He spoke little, but when he did, his words were thoughtful and direct. When Emma proudly showed him a book about New York City, his genuine interest in his daughter's excitement revealed a tenderness that contradicted his stern exterior. "You're very handy with repairs, Mr. Merritt," Zara observed as he fixed the classroom door that had been sticking. "Necessity," he replied, testing the swing of the door. "On a ranch, if something breaks, you either fix it yourself or do without. There's no calling for a craftsman out there." "It must be isolating at times," Zara ventured, thinking of her own isolation back in Boston, though for entirely different reasons. Isaac paused, seeming to consider her words carefully. It can be, but there's peace in the solitude too. Their eyes met briefly, and Zara had the distinct impression he was assessing whether she truly understood. She offered a small smile, not pressing further. As they were preparing to leave, Emma clutching a book Zara had lent her about ocean voyages, Isaac hesitated at the door. "Miss Novak, we're having a small gathering at the ranch next weekend. Nothing formal, just a barbecue for the hands and some neighbors before the fall roundup begins. Emma would like it if you'd come." He cleared his throat. "Your uncle is invited as well, of course." Emma bounced on her toes. "Please say yes. I can show you my pony, and the creek where I catch frogs, and Pa's special view of the mountains." Zara found herself charmed by the child's enthusiasm and intrigued by the invitation from her reserved father. "I'd be delighted to come. Thank you for thinking of me." After they left, Zara continued working in the suddenly quiet schoolhouse, pondering the unexpected connection she felt with both father and daughter. Emma's exuberance was infectious, but it was Isaac's quiet strength that lingered in her thoughts, the way he seemed to understand spaces and silences, the respect with which he treated her professional domain, the gentle patience he showed his daughter. The first day of school arrived with brilliant sunshine and a crisp hint of the autumn to come. Zara stood at the schoolhouse door, heart pounding as parents delivered children of various ages. She wore her most professional attire, a high-necked blue dress with her hair swept into a neat bun, hoping to convey competence despite her youth. Among the first to arrive was Emma, proudly carrying a shiny red apple. "Pa picked it special from our tree," she announced, presenting it to Zara. "He says it's tradition for the first day." Isaac nodded from horseback, tipping his hat. "Good luck today, Miss Novak." "Thank you, Mr. Merritt." She accepted the apple, their fingers briefly touching in the exchange. "And thank you for the repairs. The door hasn't stuck once." A smile, small but genuine, briefly transformed his solemn features before he turned his horse and rode away, leaving Zara wondering at the warmth that simple expression stirred within her. The school day was both exhausting and exhilarating. Her students ranged from shy little ones like 6-year-old Timothy Jenkins to towering 16-year-old Jacob Wilson, who initially slouched in his seat with obvious disdain until Zara challenged him with advanced mathematics problems that captured his interest. Emma proved to be bright and enthusiastic, though prone to daydreaming while staring out the window. When called upon, however, she always had thoughtful responses that suggested she absorbed more than her distracted manner indicated. By the end of the week, Zara had established a rhythm with her classes and begun to understand each child's strengths and challenges. She found herself looking forward to Saturday's visit to the Merritt Ranch with an eagerness that surprised her. Gilbert drove them out in his buggy, following a well-maintained road that wound through increasingly spectacular country. "The Merritt property stretches from that ridge all the way to the river," he explained, gesturing to the vast landscape. "Isaac's father started with nothing and built it into one of the most successful operations in the territory before he died. Isaac has expanded it further." "It's beautiful," Zara murmured, taking in the rolling grasslands dotted with cattle and bordered by distant mountains. The ranch house came into view, a substantial 2-story structure built of sturdy logs with a wide porch wrapping around 3 sides. Nearby stood a large barn, bunkhouse, and various outbuildings that formed the heart of the ranch operations. Several cowboys worked with horses in a corral, while smoke rose from an open pit where meat was being prepared. Emma spotted them immediately, running from the porch with her braids flying. "You came. Pa said you might be too busy, but I told him you promised." Zara laughed, accepting the girl's enthusiastic hug. "I always keep my promises to my students." Isaac approached more sedately, dressed in clean work clothes rather than his usual trail-worn attire. "Welcome to Circle M," he said, helping Zara down from the buggy with strong, steady hands. I hope the ride wasn't too dusty. Not at all. Your land is magnificent. Something like pride flickered in his eyes. Emma's been planning your visit all week. She has a full itinerary prepared. True to his word, Emma barely allowed Zara time to catch her breath before dragging her off to see her pony, a gentle, dappled mare named Butterfly. Gilbert fell into conversation with some of the older ranch hands he knew from his medical practice, leaving Zara in Emma's capable, if excitable, care. The tour included the barn with its new spring calves, the chicken coop where Emma collected eggs each morning, the vegetable garden that supplied the ranch kitchen, and finally, the promised special view, a hillside overlooking a bend in the creek where wildflowers still bloomed in protected pockets. Pa brings me here when I'm sad about Mama, Emma confided as they sat on a fallen log. He says she loved this spot because you can see the whole valley, and it makes your problems seem smaller. Zara's heart constricted at the matter-of-fact way the child spoke of her loss. Do you remember your mother? Emma shook her head. Not really. Sometimes I think I do, but Pa says it's probably just from the stories he tells me. He keeps a picture of her in his room and one in mine. She was pretty like you, but with darker hair. Zara felt a flush rise to her cheeks at the unexpected comparison. Your father must miss her very much. He does. Emma plucked a wildflower, twirling it between her fingers. He used to be sad all the time, but he's better now. He smiled yesterday when he was picking your apple. He doesn't smile much. Before Zara could process this revelation, Emma had moved on, pointing out a hawk circling overhead and explaining how her father had taught her to identify different birds of prey. They returned to find the barbecue in full swing. Long tables had been set up, laden with food contributed by the ranch cook and neighboring families. Cowboys mingled with local farmers. Children darted between groups playing impromptu games, and someone had brought a fiddle, providing lively background music. Isaac appeared at Zara's side, offering a plate of food. Emma didn't exhaust you with her enthusiasms, I hope. Not at all. She's a wonderful guide. Zara accepted the plate gratefully. You have a beautiful home, Mr. Merritt. Isaac, please. Out here, formality seems out of place. Then you must call me Zara. He nodded, a hint of that rare smile touching his lips. Did Emma show you her secret spot by the creek? She did. It's lovely. I can see why it was special to your wife. Isaac's expression grew distant for a moment. Elizabeth found beauty everywhere. She'd be pleased that Emma shares that gift. He glanced toward his daughter, who was now showing a younger child how to play horseshoes. And she'd be grateful for your influence on Emma. I've never seen her so excited about learning. She's a joy to teach, Zara said sincerely. You've raised a remarkable daughter. I've done my best. His voice held a note of uncertainty that humanized him, revealing the weight of solo parenthood he carried. It's not always easy knowing what a girl needs as she grows. From what I can see, you're giving her exactly what she needs: security, encouragement, and love. Their conversation was interrupted by one of the ranch hands calling Isaac away to resolve some dispute, but the moment of connection lingered with Zara throughout the afternoon. As evening approached, the gathering shifted closer to the house. Lanterns were lit against the growing darkness, and the fiddle player was joined by another man with a harmonica. Several couples began dancing in the cleared space between tables. Zara stood watching from the porch steps, content to observe rather than participate. She had just declined an invitation to dance from one of the younger cowboys when Isaac appeared beside her. Not dancing tonight? He asked quietly. She shook her head. I'm enjoying the music from here. Isaac nodded, understanding in his gaze. They stood in companionable silence for several minutes before he spoke again. Would you walk with me? There's something I'd like to show you before you leave. Curious, Zara agreed, following him away from the gathering and around the side of the house to a small fenced garden she hadn't noticed earlier. In the gathering dusk, white roses gleamed like ghosts against the dark earth. "Elizabeth's garden," Isaac explained, opening the gate for her. "She brought these roses from St. Louis, insisted they'd grow here despite everyone saying they'd never survive the winters." She was right, as usual. Zara stepped inside, touched that he would share something so personal. "They're beautiful. They remind me of her resilient thriving where they weren't expected to." He reached out to gently touch one bloom. "I used to come here to feel closer to her. Now I come to remember her, without the pain that used to accompany every thought." "Time changes grief," Zara said softly, thinking of her own parents. Isaac studied her face in the fading light. "You understand loss. My parents died last winter. Influenza. I'm sorry." The simple words carried genuine empathy. "Thank you for showing me this place," Zara said after a moment. "It feels sacred." "It is, in its way." Isaac's voice had softened. "But Elizabeth would be the first to say that life continues, that beauty persists and renews itself." He hesitated, then added, "She would have liked you, I think." The compliment warmed Zara deeply. From the nearby gathering, the music changed to a slower melody, drifting over them like a gentle breeze. Isaac extended his hand, much as he had at the town hall. "Would you dance with me here? Just us, no audience." The request surprised her, but she found herself placing her hand in his without hesitation. In the rose garden, beneath a sky now scattered with emerging stars, they began to sway to the distant music. Here, without watching eyes, Zara felt none of her usual anxiety. Isaac's movements were unhurried and natural, guiding rather than leading, creating a space where she could find her own rhythm. "You dance beautifully when you're not afraid," he observed. "How did you know I was afraid that night?" "I recognized the look. I've worn it myself when Elizabeth was dying, and I had no idea how to raise Emma alone." Their dancing slowed until they were barely moving, just standing close in the growing darkness, connected by shared understanding. "Thank you," Zara said quietly, "for waiting that night. For taking just that one step and giving me time to find my courage." In response, Isaac reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair that had escaped her pins behind her ear, his fingers lingering for just a moment against her cheek. The touch was tentative, questioning, and full of a tenderness that made her breath catch. The moment was broken by Emma's voice calling from the house. "Pa! Miss Novak! Uncle Gilbert says it's time to go before it gets too dark to drive." Isaac stepped back, his hand falling away. "We should return." The ride back to town was quiet, with Emma falling asleep against Zara's side and Gilbert tactfully keeping his observations to himself. At her uncle's house, Isaac helped Zara down from the buggy while Gilbert carried the sleeping child. "Thank you for coming today," Isaac said, still holding her hand. "It meant a great deal to Emma." "And to you?" Zara asked, finding boldness in the darkness. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "Yes, to me as well." In the weeks that followed, Isaac found increasingly frequent reasons to visit town. Sometimes he brought Emma for extra reading lessons. Sometimes he delivered fresh produce from the ranch garden to the school, and occasionally he simply appeared at the end of the school day to walk Zara home, their conversations ranging from books they'd both read to their differing experiences of the East and West. Autumn deepened, painting the landscape in brilliant colors and bringing cooler days that necessitated lighting the schoolroom stove each morning. Zara settled into her role as teacher, her natural shyness giving way to confidence in the classroom where she found her voice and purpose. One afternoon in late October, as golden leaves drifted from the trees lining the schoolyard, Isaac arrived just as Zara was dismissing her students. He carried a small crate and wore an expression of uncharacteristic nervousness. "I brought you something," he said once the children had dispersed, setting the crate on her desk. "For the school library." Zara opened it to find several beautifully bound volumes of poetry and literature. "These are wonderful, but they look valuable. Are you certain?" They were Elizabeth's. She'd want them to be read, not gathering dust at the ranch. He ran a hand along the spine of one book. "She used to read poetry aloud in the evenings. Emma barely remembers, but I thought, perhaps you might continue the tradition." The gift represented more than just books. It was a sharing of his past, an integration of his loss into his present. "I'd be honored," Zara said, touching his hand gently. Their fingers intertwined, and Isaac took a deep breath as if gathering courage. "Zara, I was wondering if you might join Emma and me for dinner this Sunday. Not at the ranch, at your uncle's house, if he's amenable. I thought it might be more proper." The careful formality of the invitation made Zara smile. "I'd like that very much, and I'm sure Uncle Gilbert would be delighted to host." Sunday dinner proved to be a pivotal evening. Gilbert, always perceptive, made himself scarce after the meal, taking Emma to his study ostensibly to show her some interesting medical illustrations, but clearly giving the adults time alone. Seated in her uncle's small parlor, the lamplight casting a warm glow over them, Isaac and Zara found themselves in a moment of charged silence. "Emma adores you," Isaac finally said. "She talks about you constantly." "I've grown very fond of her, too." "And of her father?" His voice was low, uncertain in a way that revealed the vulnerability beneath his strong exterior. Zara gathered her courage. "Very much so." Isaac moved from his chair to sit beside her on the sofa, taking her hand in both of his. "I never expected this. After Elizabeth died, I thought that part of my life was over. I didn't want it, didn't want to risk that kind of loss again." "What changed?" Zara asked softly. "You did." His eyes held hers steadily. "That night at the dance, when you were too shy to step forward but found the courage to join me anyway, I saw something in you that reminded me, life isn't about avoiding fear. It's about finding the strength to move forward despite it." His words touched something deep within her, the recognition that her journey west had been exactly that. A step into fear that had ultimately led her to greater strength and, unexpectedly, to him. "May I court you properly, Zara Novak?" Isaac asked, his voice steady but his hands betraying a slight tremor. "I'm not a sophisticated man, and my life is tied to this land in ways that may seem limiting to someone raised in the East, but I can promise honesty, respect, and a heart that's learning to hope again." Zara placed her free hand against his cheek, feeling the slight roughness of evening stubble beneath her palm. "I came west believing I was merely escaping a life I couldn't maintain. Instead, I found the life I was meant to have." She smiled, feeling none of the shyness that had once constrained her. "Yes, Isaac Merritt, I would be honored by your courtship." When he kissed her, it was gentle and questioning at first, then deepening as she responded. His hand cradled the back of her head as though she were precious, and Zara felt the last walls around her heart dissolving. The courtship that followed became the talk of Silverwater Creek. Though most approved of the match between the reserved rancher and the quietly determined schoolteacher, Isaac respected Zara's professional responsibilities, never interfering with her teaching but finding ways to support her work. Building new bookshelves for the growing school library, organizing fathers to construct a proper playground, and advocating for increased town funding for educational supplies. Zara, in turn, became a steady presence for both Isaac and Emma, joining them for Sunday dinners, accompanying them to church, and gradually bringing more laughter into their home. She discovered an unexpected affinity for ranch life during her weekend visits, finding peace in the open spaces that had initially intimidated her. Winter arrived with a vengeance in December, bringing heavy snows that often made the journey between town and the ranch difficult. On days when travel was impossible, Isaac and Zara exchanged letters carried by ranch hands who made the trip despite the weather. Her uncle, finding these missives on his breakfast table, would smile knowingly, but say nothing beyond commenting on the dedication of the Merritt Ranch employees. Christmas brought a temporary thaw and a town celebration that transformed the modest church into a wonderland of greenery and candles. Isaac and Emma joined Zara and Gilbert for Christmas dinner, bringing gifts that revealed how well Isaac had come to know her: a writing desk for her bedroom, a set of fountain pens, and a leather-bound journal embossed with her initials. "For your thoughts and observations," he explained, as she ran her fingers over the supple cover. "You mentioned once that you used to write stories as a girl. Perhaps you might begin again." Zara's gift to him was equally thoughtful: a small wooden box containing pressed flowers from Elizabeth's rose garden, preserved between glass sheets. "So you can carry a piece of her memory wherever you go," she explained. Isaac's eyes glistened as he examined the delicate preservation. "You understand," he said simply, the words encompassing volumes of meaning between them. Their courtship deepened through the winter months, weathering its first challenges when an outbreak of scarlet fever struck the community in February. School was temporarily closed as several children fell ill. Gilbert worked tirelessly, with Zara assisting as best she could, preparing remedies and helping to monitor the sickest patients. When Emma developed a mild case, Isaac's fear was palpable, the specter of losing another loved one clearly haunting him. Zara stayed at the ranch for a week, working alongside Isaac to nurse Emma through her fever, her calm presence balancing his anxiety. One night, as Emma's fever finally broke, Zara found Isaac on the porch despite the bitter cold, staring into the darkness with shoulders rigid with tension. "She's sleeping peacefully," Zara assured him, wrapping a blanket around them both as she joined him. "Her fever's gone. She's going to be fine." Isaac released a shuddering breath, some of the tension leaving his body. "When she first got sick, all I could think was, not again. I couldn't bear to lose her too." "You won't lose her. Not this time." Zara leaned her head against his shoulder. "I realized something while sitting beside her bed," Isaac said, after a long moment. "I've been holding part of myself back from Emma, from you, from life itself. Trying to protect what remains by not risking too much involvement, too much love. That's natural, after what you experienced. But it's no way to live." He turned to face her, taking her hands in his. "Watching you this week, your strength, your tenderness with Emma, the way you face challenges directly instead of retreating, I've never been more certain of anything than I am, of my feelings for you." In the silver moonlight reflecting off the snow, Isaac knelt before her. "I don't want to wait any longer. Life is too uncertain, too precious. Zara Novak, will you marry me? Will you build a life with Emma and me on this land?" Despite the cold, warmth flooded through Zara. The shy girl who had arrived in Silverwater Creek less than a year ago would never have imagined herself here, confident in her place, certain of her heart, ready to embrace a future so different from anything she had envisioned. "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "With all my heart, yes." They were married in April, when the land was coming alive with new growth and promise. The ceremony in Silverwater Creek's small church was attended by the entire community, with Emma serving proudly as her new mother's attendant, carefully scattering rose petals from Elizabeth's garden along the aisle. Zara wore a simple gown of ivory silk, ordered from Denver with Gilbert's help. As she walked toward Isaac, who stood tall and solemn at the altar, she felt none of the shyness or anxiety that had once defined her. Instead, she moved with quiet confidence, each step carrying her toward the future she had chosen. Their vows were straightforward but heartfelt. spoken in voices that carried clearly through the hushed church. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac's kiss was both tender and possessive, drawing murmurs of approval from the assembled guests. The celebration afterward at the town hall featured the same fiddle player who had provided music for Zara's welcome dance months earlier. This time, when Isaac extended his hand for the first dance, Zara stepped forward without hesitation, moving into his arms with the ease of someone who had found her rightful place. "Do you remember that first night?" Isaac murmured as they moved across the floor, all eyes upon them. "How terrified you looked when they called for you to dance." "I remember you taking just one step and waiting," she replied. "It was the most patient, understanding thing anyone had ever done for me." "I knew then that you were different," he admitted. "I just didn't realize how completely you would change my life." After the celebration, they returned to the ranch, now Zara's home as well. Isaac carried her across the threshold in traditional fashion, setting her down in the entrance hall that had been transformed by fresh paint and new curtains in preparation for her arrival. Emma, who had ridden ahead with one of the hands, had arranged wildflowers in vases throughout the house and proudly showed Zara the changes to the master bedroom, where Elizabeth's remaining possessions had been respectfully moved to make room for Zara's things. "Pa put Mama's special items in a beautiful chest for me to have when I'm older," Emma explained. "He says it's important to honor the past while embracing the future." Later, when Emma was asleep and they were finally alone, Isaac led Zara to the rose garden, now blooming with early spring flowers. Under the vast canopy of stars, he drew her into his arms. "When I brought you here that first time, I never imagined we would be standing here as husband and wife," he said. "I was still half living in memories." "And now?" Zara asked, her arms encircling his waist. "Now I'm fully present in this moment, with you." He brushed his lips against her forehead. "You've taught me it's possible to honor what was lost while still finding joy in what's been found." Their kiss deepened with newfound freedom, the promise of the night ahead adding urgency to their embrace. When they finally separated, breathless and laughing, Isaac swept Zara into his arms once more to carry her into their home and their future together. Epilogue. 5 years later, the Circle M Ranch had flourished under the combined efforts of Isaac and Zara Merritt. The original house had been expanded to accommodate their growing family, which now included twin 3-year-old boys with their father's blue eyes and a new baby girl just 6 months old. Zara had continued teaching until the twins' birth, then reluctantly resigned her position to focus on raising their children and helping manage the increasingly prosperous ranch. She hadn't abandoned education entirely, though she now hosted a weekly reading circle for neighboring families and ranch employees, and was working to establish a proper library for Silverwater Creek. Emma, now 14, had blossomed into a confident young woman who excelled in her studies and helped care for her younger siblings with natural maternal instinct. She still maintained her adventurous spirit, often riding the range with her father and dreaming of attending university in Denver, a plan both Isaac and Zara fully supported. On this particular evening, the family had gathered on the expanded porch to enjoy the summer sunset. Baby Elizabeth slept in her cradle while the twins, James and William, played with wooden horses Isaac had carved. Emma sat on the steps reading a new novel Zara had ordered from Boston. "Town's growing," Isaac remarked, his arm comfortably around Zara's shoulders as they sat together on the porch swing. "Mayor's talking about bringing in the railroad next year." "Progress is inevitable, I suppose," Zara replied, "though I hope Silverwater doesn't change too quickly. There's something special about this place." Isaac nodded, watching his children with evident satisfaction. "I never imagined my life would take this turn. After Elizabeth died, I thought my future was set just Emma and me, getting by day to day on this land. And I never imagined I would find courage to leave everything familiar behind," Zara added, leaning into his embrace. "We've both come so far from who we were." From inside the house, they heard the sound of the piano Isaac had purchased for their first anniversary. Emma had abandoned her book and slipped inside to play the instrument she had taken to with natural talent. "Dance with me?" Isaac asked, standing and extending his hand just as he had that first night so long ago. Zara placed her hand in his without hesitation, moving into his arms with the ease of long familiarity. As they swayed together on the porch with their children nearby, and the vast Montana landscape spread before them, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought her here from the shy, uncertain girl who could barely step onto a dance floor to the confident woman who had found her strength, her voice, and her heart in this unexpected place. "What are you thinking?" Isaac murmured, brushing a kiss against her temple. "I'm thinking about first steps," she replied, smiling up at the man who had simply taken one step and waited until she was ready to join him, the patient beginning of a dance that would last a lifetime. "And how they lead to places we never imagined." Isaac's arms tightened around her. "Best step I ever took." As the last light of day painted the mountains in gold and purple, they continued their dance, surrounded by the life they had built together, two people who had found the courage to begin again, one step at a time.